recently. As a result of the allegations, and as board chair, I authorized an investigation to be conducted by outside legal counsel. The investigation is now complete, and findings were forwarded to the school board's legal counsel, Mr. Waltzberger, who is here tonight to share the findings with the board and to provide an opportunity for the board to ask questions. Neither the board nor the superintendent have received a copy of the findings, as they will be presented tonight for the first time. Mr. Waltzberger, thank you for being here tonight, and I will turn it over to you.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I will distribute a copy of the findings, and I do have a couple extras in accordance with the open meeting law that can be provided to the public at public cable as well.
Thank you.
While those are being distributed, just by way of background, it was all the way back toward the end of August when the investigation was authorized. Questions right off the bat may come up and say, by what authority did you have to authorize the investigation? And for those who are not familiar with this area of the law, the school board chair has special powers. The school board chair has the power to commence legal actions and to defend legal actions. And part of that power includes the power to commence investigation. So commencing an investigation certainly is a lesser power than commencing a legal action and is subsumed within that. So the allegations were somewhat broad here, and they range from things such as not being prepared for meetings, not following policy, not following protocol for communicating with staff members, and things of that nature. And so what I'd like to do is walk through the investigation report now and kind of summarize the various pieces for the board. Excuse me, and then give the board an opportunity to ask questions. I can lay out options for the board to consider moving forward. So the first part of the report, as you'll see, is the background. And this is important because all board members, as you know, go through an onboarding process. It's essentially a training process for board members. And it's pretty robust in your district in particular. You have one-to-one meetings with the superintendent. There are meetings with every member of the superintendent's cabinet. There is an experienced board member who is assigned to be a mentor for every new board member. There's MSBA training and conferences that board members attend. There's also a new board member orientation packet or document that's provided to new board members. And that outlines various board member expectations, logistics, and protocols, including protocols for communicating with the superintendent. And among other things, that document makes it clear that board members are to communicate through the superintendent and not with individual staff members. And the reasons for that are pretty obvious. If we have 7 board members or even 6 board members communicating directly with staff members, we can easily overburden them. They're not sure who they're supposed to answer to. And frankly, it can be intimidating to staff members as well because they view the board as their boss, the ultimate boss of their boss, the superintendent. And so the established protocol and practice in the state of Minnesota is that the school board has one employee. That is the superintendent. And the superintendent then oversees all the other employees. And you'll recall I provided this information as part of the training that I gave to the board back in July. So that document clarifies these things. It clarifies as well what you're supposed to do as a board member to be prepared and to make sure that the superintendent and the cabinet is prepared to answer and respond to questions that board members might have regarding agenda items. So to that end, the protocol put forth in this new board member orientation document requires that all board members contact the superintendent by Friday afternoon before the upcoming school board meeting. If they have questions, concerns, need more information, have input, so that we don't have questions coming out of left field, so that everyone can be prepared and has a fair opportunity to move forward. And it's really about efficiency and governance, because it makes no sense to go into a meeting unprepared, to impede the board from moving forward because someone hasn't prepared ahead of time, hasn't given the superintendent or the cabinet an opportunity ahead of time to bring the necessary information forward. So we have this requirement, and that's been refined and honed over the years so that it's by noon on Friday. And everybody understands that that's the requirement. By noon on Friday, if you have questions or concerns, you're to bring them forward to the superintendent by that time. In addition, like almost every other district in the state of Minnesota, your district has a policy governing the conduct of board members. And it's policy 209, which contains the code of ethics for board members. Policy 209 requires, among other things, that board members come to meetings prepared. It requires that they inform themselves about their proper duties and functions as a board member, that they respect the requirement that they are to set policy, not to implement policy, that they understand that their responsibility can be exercised only through the board as a body and not as individual board members, that they understand they're to work through the superintendent and not around the superintendent or over the superintendent, because doing so undermines the superintendent's authority. And you recall during the training I provided in July, I gave a lot of reasons why that's important to adhere to that. The policy requires that board members recognize that the authority rests with the board in legal session, and that individual board members have no authority, save one, the board chair. The board chair is the only one who has individual authority. And of course, they're required to comply with all district policies and take no action that will compromise the board or the administration. So that is the heart and soul of the policy that we're going to be talking about today. And on top of that, as I mentioned, there's training in the report. Some of that training is summarized that was provided to you. So from that, let's jump forward and talk about a summary of the findings. And I'm going to start with Director Anderson first. And this is meant just to be an executive summary. If the board wants a detailed point-by-point finding and all the evidence listed under it, we're happy to do that. I have my associate who did the investigation do that for the board if you think that would be helpful. But generally speaking, I think this gives a full appreciation of what was happening and lays out examples of what the concerns were. So the first finding is that Director Anderson has been unprepared for meetings. Specifically, that he's come to board meetings unprepared, claiming that he has not had enough time to review items such as policies. When asked about this, and specifically about an example that occurred on August 14, Director Anderson reported that he had read all the policies, but had not had time to review them in detail. This is inconsistent with an email to the superintendent and to Chair Thompson on the afternoon of August 14, where Director Anderson stated that he did not make it through all the policies. Similarly, in a recording on the meeting on August 14th at approximately 40 minutes into the meeting, Director Anderson stated that he had only gotten through about half of the policies. I think a fair conclusion based on the evidence is that he was not prepared to move forward on that day, and that is simply an example of lack of preparation. Applicable policy language again says that you have to come to meetings prepared for discussion of agenda items. The second finding regarding Director Anderson, he did not provide timely notice to the superintendent or board chair when he needed more information about an agenda item for an upcoming meeting. And as I reviewed, that is the clear protocol that all board members are to follow. And as a result of Director Anderson not complying with this, there were multiple occasions in which policies or other items on the agenda had to be tabled. So it affected the operations and efficiency of the board. Director Anderson, to his credit, admitted that he did not always send questions or seek additional information on the agenda items by the deadline. He acknowledged, for example, that with respect to the August 14 meeting, that he didn't get feedback to the superintendent until Sunday afternoon, which of course did not give the superintendent adequate time to turn around and prepare for the meeting on Monday. The third finding with respect to Director Anderson is that he exceeded his authority by representing that he was acting on behalf of the board or the district. And there are a couple different ways in which this occurred. One, it was reported that at a board meeting that Director Anderson had represented the district during MSBA Day at the Capitol, and he acknowledged that he should not have done that. It was further reported that he had been told not to represent the district prior to attending MSBA Day at the Capitol. When questioned about this, Director Anderson admitted that he attended and that he talked to legislators and their staff. He stated that he had used a document that the district had provided, and he did not believe he was doing anything wrong by doing that. He stated that his message was focused on funding mandates. But in the final analysis, the presentation is such that he's representing the board without authority to do that. Also, on January 16th, Director Anderson contacted the MSBA by email. In the email communication, Director Anderson stated that, quote, "The question came up on how to define the term underrepresented in policy 601. He then went on to ask for information about definitions. The email clearly implied that the board had a question, but that was not the case. The board did not have that question. This was a question that just Director Anderson had and had propounded then to the MSBA to answer." The next finding with respect to Director Anderson is that he made comments that were inappropriate for the workplace and inappropriate for a board member. And with respect to the findings relative to Director Anderson, this is, in my legal opinion, the most serious. Specifically, it was reported that he told Dr. Bittman, superintendent, on multiple occasions that he would be fired if he worked in corporate America. He made these comments within the context of staff injuries that were being caused by special education students. There is a grave concern here about the lack of understanding and knowledge of involvement related to special education students and their rights. That creates one problem. Two, to suggest that the one employee of the board could be fired in that manner certainly has an intimidating, threatening impact to it. Dr. Bittman documented this in an email back to Director Anderson, and Director Anderson did not make any effort to rebut or contradict the information in the email. When he was interviewed, though, he denied making the statement. But that's tough to accept that with respect to the email that we had confirming the statement was made. Director Anderson was also reported to have told the superintendent it was just a matter of time before the district would be sued because of the superintendent. He denied making that statement as well. It was also reported by multiple individuals that Director Anderson had made disparaging remarks about the board and Superintendent Bittman in the community, and specifically claiming that Superintendent Bittman was manipulative, was blowing him off, and was not a good superintendent. Superintendent Bittman reported that 7 or 8 individuals had approached him about comments that both Director Anderson and Director Freiberg had made about him, including the same use of the word manipulative. Finally, it was reported that Director Anderson made inappropriate statements in an email to another board member. Specifically, on August 24, 2023, Director Anderson sent an email to another board member accusing the district of plagiarizing from another school district's website. In his email, Director Anderson stated, quote, "By the way, this is a Minneapolis schools, and notice it is an elementary school. You missed their drag queen performance. I would not think you would support this, but Minneapolis loves their CRT SEL." Director Anderson denied telling Dr. Bittman on multiple occasions he'd be fired, but said instead that he told Dr. Bittman that if he ran a plant and had excessive safety issues, he would have X amount of time to clear it up or be let go. And that's not consistent with the documentation from Dr. Bittman in an email to Director Anderson. Director Anderson stated that he could not recall making any comments to Superintendent Bittman about getting the district sued, and he denied making any other negative comments to or about the superintendent, including any comments in the community. Director Anderson stated that perhaps individuals in the community just had misconstrued his comments. While perceptions may vary, it is clear that Director Anderson has made remarks that have given community members the perception he is speaking negatively about the superintendent. And we had no reason to believe that the community members who reported hearing those negative comments would fabricate the information. Finally, there's no dispute that Director Anderson made the inappropriate comments about a, quote, drag queen performance at the Minneapolis elementary school. A reasonable person could construe such comments to be discriminatory and contrary to well-settled law regarding the rights of transgender students. Finally, Director Anderson is found to have sought to implement policy rather than delegate the implementation of policy to the superintendent. It's undisputed that, for example, that Director Anderson has ongoing concerns about get to know you exercises that some of the teachers in the district have utilized, and specifically questions that allow students to state their preferred names and pronouns. Director Anderson has repeatedly asserted that these exercises violate policy 520, which is surveys. In response, Superintendent Bittman has repeatedly informed Director Anderson that no violation of policy has occurred, and that the exercises are voluntary classroom assignments and not surveys. He also informed Director Anderson that the teachers who utilized the exercises did not violate any policy. Director Anderson was unwilling to accept that position. Superintendent Bittman estimated that Director Anderson raised this issue with him between 12 and 15 times. In July, I provided training again to the board, and as part of that training, I addressed this issue. And consistent with the information that Superintendent Bittman had provided, I specifically gave advice to the board that the classroom exercises were not a survey within the meaning of the policy or the law, and that no violation had occurred. Even after receiving that legal guidance, and I serve as counsel for the board as a body, Director Anderson persisted in asserting that the classroom exercises are a survey that violate policy 520. For example, on August 17th, Director Anderson emailed Chair Thompson and Superintendent Bittman about the issue. As part of that, he stated that all questionnaires and surveys should be given to parents and have an opt-out provision.
They should
When
be.
questioned about this during the investigation, Director Anderson stated that
They should be.
Director Anderson stated that he believes the policy applies, and he believes it's within his role as a board member, specifically his fiduciary oversight duties, which don't exist with respect to policy implementation. And he went on to specifically say it was within his duties to oversee how policy was implemented. That language is directly contrary to language in Policy 209, your Code of Ethics for board members. I'd like to now move on to the summary of findings regarding Director Freiberg. First finding for Director Freiberg is that she's been late for several board obligations. It was reported, for example, that she's been late to the Northwest Suburban Integration District Joint Powers Board meetings, and she is the representative of the district for the Joint Powers Board for the Northwest Suburban Integration District. In response to this allegation, Director Freiberg stated that she may have been a minute late as she was trying to connect to the virtual meeting. Digging into this, we found that her report is inconsistent with email correspondence from the executive director. The executive director reported specifically that Director Freiberg was late multiple times and signed into the March 2023 meeting approximately 5 minutes before it adjourned. Certainly not a minute late. It was also reported that Director Freiberg was late to interviews that were held to select the new executive director of the Northwest Suburban Integration District. A couple of hours before the job interviews were scheduled to begin, Director Freiberg allegedly called and said she would be late. She was then told she couldn't participate in the interviews the following day if she didn't participate in all of them the first day. Director Freiberg, for her part, reported that she operates an in-home daycare and could not attend the first set of interviews because they were scheduled during the day. She stated that she wanted to go to some of the other interviews but was told she couldn't because she missed the first day. Assuming this to be true, it does not change the fact that she would not have been on time for the interviews and did not meet her obligations to attend the interviews on the first day, and therefore could not attend the other interviews. Second finding is that Director Freiberg has been unprepared for meetings. Numerous individuals reported concerns about Director Freiberg being unprepared for board meetings. For example, she comes to board meetings and claims that she's not had enough time to review materials when the materials were provided a week in advance. With respect to the August 14th meeting, Director Freiberg claimed that she was not ready to consider a policy that the board had previously tabled, so it had been out there for quite some time. Director Freiberg, according to a number of board members, will either outright say she's not reviewing all the materials, or will sometimes act in a manner which appears to be using, like for example, wanting to discuss an issue further as an excuse for not being prepared. Director Freiberg, for her part, denied being unprepared for board meetings. She reported that she spends hours reviewing materials for meetings and specifically spent hours reviewing the policies for the August 14th meeting. She explained that she wanted to pull the policies from the consent agenda because she wanted to discuss them, not because she was unprepared to vote on them. However, in the recording of the August 14, 2023 meeting, approximately 57 minutes in, Director Freiberg stated that she needed more time to review the proposed revisions to the policy that had previously been tabled, and that undercuts a claim that she was prepared. It indicates she was not prepared. Superintendent Bittman reported that Director Freiberg does not timely review her board emails as well. He and another director also reported that Director Freiberg will ask for information that was previously sent to the board. Superintendent Bittman reported that Director Freiberg, for example, did not timely respond to an email about serving as a board representative for a grievance hearing. Director Freiberg admitted that she does occasionally request information that was already provided to the board. She stated that it takes her time to go through everything. She also admitted that she did not respond to Superintendent Bittman's email about the grievance hearing within the timeline he provided. She stated that there was no board meeting coming up and she had been on vacation. However, at another point in the interview, she stated that she checks her board email a few times a week. And so it's unclear why it took her nearly a month to respond to Superintendent Bittman's email. The next finding is that Director Freiberg has failed to provide timely notice to the superintendent when she needed additional information regarding an agenda item. And this is the same basic finding that we covered earlier. Director Freiberg does not ask questions or provide feedback by the Friday noon deadline, and as a result, items have had to be pulled from the agenda, including Policy 601 during the meeting on August 14th. Director Freiberg, to her credit, did not deny these allegations. Instead, she reported that there's not much time to submit questions and she's not always able to do it right away. She stated that she tried to submit her questions by noon on Friday, but could not always do it. The next finding is that Director Freiberg exceeded her authority as a board member. Specifically, there's an allegation that she contacted a curriculum vendor directly, and you recall from the training I provided that that is a strict no for board members. She contacted curriculum director directly about a proposed health curriculum that the district had been reviewing. This contact occurred after the parent review period, during which any parent, including Director Freiberg, could have reviewed the proposed curriculum. Director Freiberg, it's reported, then directly contacted the district staff member about reviewing the proposed curriculum. And in the email to the staff member, which was dated May 12, 2023, Director Freiberg stated, "I'm writing to get digital access to the Great Body Shop. I'm a parent and a board member." The staff member was very uncomfortable with that direct contact and informed a supervisor, who then informed the superintendent. Director Freiberg then allegedly contacted the curriculum vendor directly and asked to view the proposed curriculum. When the director told her she could not do so, she informed the vendor again that she was a board member. The vendor still declined. Director Freiberg denied that she contacted district staff or the vendor outside of the review period. She stated that she sent an email to the vendor, but she believes the email went to the junk mail folder. She stated that the vendor responded to her maybe a week later or more. She stated that the vendor then gave her the name of a staff member. Director Freiberg's statements raise some questions. First, it's unclear why her email would have gone to the junk folder when all the other emails did not. Second, her email to the staff member was dated May 12, 2023. This was well beyond the review period for both elementary and the secondary curriculum. The review period for the elementary curriculum was April 21 to April 28, 2023. The review period for the secondary curriculum was March 30th, to April 11th. So we're well past that. More than a month for the secondary curriculum. And if Director Freiberg had submitted a timely email to the vendor and had received a response even more than a week later, it's unclear why she did not attempt to make further contact on that issue until May 12th. When she made contact with the district staff member, as I stated before, Director Freiberg told the staff member she was, quote, a parent and a board member. Director Freiberg stated that she told the staff member this for the sake of honesty. This explanation is trouble. In subsequent communications with Chair Thompson, Director Freiberg asserted that she was contacting the staff member in her capacity as a parent. Thus, there would be no legitimate reason to inform the staff member that she was a board member. You'll have to draw your own conclusion in terms of whether Director Freiberg was seeking to use her status as a board member to gain special access or privilege. Director Freiberg also exceeded her authority by seeking to insert herself into day-to-day operations of the district. There are just a couple examples in the report, but there were many others given during the course of the investigation. For example, Director Freiberg raised concerns about the closure of bathrooms at Elk River High School. She raised concerns about a particular student's ability to attend Adventure Club. There are allegations that she told a parent that a student should be suspended. There's a number of concerns raised. Despite the training she received, Director Freiberg asserted that part of her role as a board member is to learn how things operate, including bathrooms and Adventure Club. Contrary to those statements, Board governance does not encompass whether a particular bathroom is open or whether a particular student attends a particular club. The next finding is that Director Freiberg has failed to follow the board's communication protocols. And this is an area in which there have been repeated and many violations. Specifically, the allegation is that Director Freiberg violated the established communication protocol requiring that all communications and requests for information be directed to the superintendent and not to district staff. The district notified Director Freiberg of this communication protocol on several occasions after she was elected. She continued to violate it. During her first meeting with the superintendent on December 9th, Superintendent Pittman specifically told her that all communications are supposed to go through him. And again, that protocol is also stated in the orientation material she received. And the months that followed, Chair Thompson and Superintendent Pittman had multiple conversations with Director Freiberg about this protocol. And Superintendent Pittman estimated that he had 7 to 10 conversations with Director Freiberg about this. On January 25, 2023, after Director Freiberg had contacted the staff member directly, Superintendent Pittman emailed her and again told her to work through him if she has questions for staff. Director Freiberg responded the same day that she would do that moving forward. Despite that statement, the very next day, she directly emailed several questions to a staff member instead of working through Superintendent Pittman. Again, on March 14, 2023, Superintendent Pittman emailed Director Freiberg and asked that she funnel all questions for staff through him. She responded that she'd observed Director Anderson asking cabinet members questions, but that Superintendent Pittman could, quote, consider the change done. She then, later, sent an email stating that she should be able to ask questions and that she was just doing her job as a board member, indicating that she was going to continue operating in the same manner that she had. When she was interviewed, Director Freiberg admitted that when she first started on the board, she went directly to district staff to obtain information rather than working through Superintendent Pittman. She reported that she did not really understand the communication protocol at first. She also stated that she did not think it was a big deal to ask questions directly of staff. Director Freiberg noted that after a meeting with Chair Thompson and Superintendent Pittman in the spring of 2023, it became very clear that she had to go through Superintendent Pittman. Director Freiberg's claim that she did not understand this protocol until sometime in the spring raises credibility concerns given the simplicity of the protocol. Moreover, as discussed earlier, she contacted a staff member directly on May 12 and represented that she was a parent and a board member when seeking digital access to the curriculum. So that raises the concern again. So those are the findings from the investigation. They are straightforward. I don't think that there's I think that they're straightforward. They go to the duty of the board member. They go to policy provisions. They relate to the ability of the board to operate effectively and efficiently without having unnecessary delays and so forth. And so with that, I'd take any questions that board members might have.
Any questions or comments from Mr. Walsberger from the board?
Yes, question would be, I noticed in your summary here, when you went over policy 209, you left out point 3, which says, listen to the opinions and views of others, including but not limited to other school board members, administration, staff, students, and community members.
Yeah. Yeah.
Before we proceed, I'd like to remind the audience that in accordance with policy 206, members of the public may not engage in conduct that disrupts any part of a school board meeting or that otherwise impedes the school board's ability to conduct its business in an orderly and efficient manner. Examples of such behavior include, but are not limited to, interrupting a speaker, making comments from the audience, interrupting the school board chair or any other school board member or school official who is speaking, holding up a sign or displaying a banner, regardless of the content of the sign or banner, cheering, booing, vocalizing approval, or vocalizing disapproval for a speaker during the speaker's presentation, clapping during a speaker's presentation, unless a school board member or school official is presenting an award to a person who is describing an honor or award that a person has received, addressing the audience rather than the school board. I would kindly ask those that are engaging in these or similar activities to refrain from doing so. Individuals who choose to continue will be directed to leave. We are trying to conduct our business here as a school board meeting in the public. It is not a place where we can have comment while we're conducting our business. So I appreciate, so we can continue and we can move forward with our meeting. Thank you.
I'd be happy to respond to that, Director Anderson. There are many parts of the policy that weren't included, and we didn't include that part of the policy in the letter because that's not one provision you're alleged to have violated. And the findings here, with respect to you, are that you are unprepared for board meetings. That has nothing to do with listening to the opinions of others. 2, that you failed to provide timely notice to the superintendent and board chair when you needed additional information on an agenda item. That has nothing to do with listening to opinions and views of others. 3, that you exceeded your authority by representing that you're acting on behalf of the board of the district. That has nothing to do with listening to the opinions and views of others. 4, that you made comments that were clearly inappropriate for the workplace. That has nothing to do with listening to the opinions and views of others. And 5, that you sought to implement policies rather than to delegate the implementation of the superintendent. Again, nothing to do with the opinions and views of others. That's why that was not included.
I would dispute that. I'm prepared for meetings, that's totally untrue. I went through a detailed review of the policies. I reviewed all the policies, but then I wrote very detailed, and I provided that to Superintendent Bittman and Chair Thompson. And did anyone else provide anything that detailed as I went through? I doubt it. And what I meant by that is I went through paragraph by paragraph, making sure citations, all the information was correct, paragraph headings. That takes a lot of time. I used to do that. I used to write ANSI standards. And so that takes a lot of work, a lot of time. And when you get 30 policies that you have to review in 4 weeks, I put 25, 30 hours into those documents and I got halfway through. Now I read them all, but if you want the thorough review, that's what I needed to do. And let's just back up, MSBA Legislative Day at the Capitol. Director Franzen gave me a sheet from ISD 728 legislative issues. I went around and I talked to a couple of legislators because a lot of them were in committees at the time. And so I spent a lot of time on both sides of the House, probably spent more time on the DFL side, went to all the policy committee or the educational finance, educational policy committee people and started talking to them about what are the legislative goals for the district based upon the information that I received. I wasn't representing, some out of the box thing on my own. I was representing the hard copy data that the district that I left, the handout that I was given by Director Franzen with each of the DFL legislators and the Republican legislators that I stopped by to see. So there was nothing nefarious there. I wasn't acting on some other mission beside that. And matter of fact, I had another school board member from another district with me because we went together because we thought it would be a good use of time. I want to talk a little bit more about what happened over the course of time. Director Freiberg had a listening session back in March, and we just talked at the Dunn Brothers.
What about another allegation, John?
And she invited me along, and anyways, right after that, Superintendent Bittman sent an email to Terry Morrow, who's the legal advisor on MSBA, saying that I'm sharing misinformation. This is a listening session. And that happened, and I had it on Facebook, so there was nothing that I was hiding from the public. And then what happened is, later on, back in a little over a year ago now, I finally got my Pellsby short-term call license for substitute teaching. So I was a substitute now in ISD 728 and also in 477, which is Princeton.
I'm going to interrupt briefly because these are interesting pieces of information you can share with people as you see fit, but they don't relate in any way to the investigation report.
Yes, it does.
Let him finish.
I have a
Let
right
him
to speak as a
finish.
board
He has a
member.
right to speak.
You do. You have a right, this opportunity though is for you to ask questions of me about the report. And what you're saying, the last three things you said have nothing to do with
But
it.
I'm saying that this was not in the report, some of the punitive actions that occurred to me because of this. I had Dr.
The report
Bittman.
covers the allegations that were made against you that were substantiated.
You also have
Those were
ethics
substantiated.
as
This
an
is a-
attorney.
This is another warning. If there's any more comments from the audience, then you'll be asked to be removed.
Can't
Then
wait
let
for
him
lunch.
speak.
That
Yeah,
there are no more.
Let me
He's
speak.
interrupting, he's interrupting too, Thompson.
I would ask the audience, please, let us talk and work this
Thank
thing out.
you for letting us conduct our business.
But if you want to get back to some of the allegations, like 520, the rules are when we get an email from, or a phone call from a constituent, and this happens to be with surveys, their daughter in a 6th grade class got a survey asking for gender pronouns, and I says, what's with this? So I forwarded that information on to Dr. Bettman and said, what should we do with this? And he wrote back, and I followed the protocol there on how to deal with that. And I said, a clear reading of policy 520 says this is a survey. And what happened is, no, that's not a survey, this is a get to know you type assignment. And I said, this is kind of a tautological argument now on whether it means this or that. But the idea is you're acquiring information from a student. So that was the context of that inquiry. Plus we had another survey from Elk River High School, very similar. Another parent sent me, and I forwarded that to Dr. Bittman. I did not follow up with anyone. I did not pass it around the community or anything like that. I just sent it on. So that's a little bit about that particular thing. Now, if you want to know about the whole safety aspect, since that was brought up, I used to be a plant manager. Safety was number one. When I started off with meetings in my, when I did an executive overview on plant operations, the number one slide was, what's your safety record? So in my mind, that's kind of a culture. Anecdotally, you heard about safety incidences and the different programs, so I sent an email to Dr. Bittman saying, what's our safety record? It was hard to get information. And when I saw some of the numbers, I said, I'll quote this. I said, when I was a plant manager, if I had those kind of numbers, I would be in a lot of trouble. And I'd have to get my safety numbers cleaned up, or I could be potentially fired. And that's with a big company that I worked for. It was a $20 billion company. So I'm just saying, what my work experience is. That's all I was saying. Anyways, a lot of the things that happened over the time, for example, there was another email right after the September 11th meeting. I talked with the president of the teachers representatives, the EREA, and that was a violation of policy 209. I have no idea how it is because we're supposed to talk to our constituents. She brought up an issue. I just said, can you further expand on what you mean by this? And then we talked quite a bit about my son training his dog on our property and found out we were neighbors. Our property almost butts up to each other. So we had a pleasant talk about kids and so on. So I think that was totally taken out of context, and I think a lot of these things are. And it's really, really sad that it comes to this, but this, we're not supposed to talk to our staff, our teachers, our constituents. As a matter of fact, when we joined the board, we were told, if you're gonna vote no on something, make sure you tell us in advance. Don't ask too hard of questions at meetings.
Wow.
I mean, this is really tough stuff, and I came from corporate America where my president would drill me, and if I wasn't prepared, I mean, they would just slaughter me. So I had to have my stuff together. And so this is a different environment for me, and maybe I'm not used to this. So that's where I'm coming from. But I just think this interview, the interrogation that I had, was just kind of a looking for a crime, looking for something. And I just think it's terrible what's going on here. But that's going to be the other board members to decide. I have no shame in what I've done. And I'd advocate for the employees, for our constituents, keep it on going. And just to further let you know, Dr. Bittman called Teachers on Call and removed me from the sublist for this district without my knowledge.
Wow.
And so I'm no longer a substitute in ISD 728.
Wow.
So
Wow.
why?
Mr.
Mr.
Anderson,
Benson,
do you
why?
have any other questions or comments?
Nope, I'm good.
Any other board members have any questions or comments?
Yes, I have some comments.
Can I quickly respond to a couple
Yeah,
of things, Madam Chair?
absolutely.
First of all, with respect to the safety and plant manager, I remind the board that the comment was made multiple times. There's not a basis for doing that, and certainly in the manner it was perceived by the superintendent was to be intimidating, threatening, from the boss. Also,
He needs a
the
thicker
disclaim
skin.
of, something with respect to speaking to the union representative and being a violation, there's nothing addressed along those lines in the policies. There's nothing that says you can't talk to staff members or to constituents. You can't talk to staff members about school district business, about things that are potentially before the board. You can't gather information from them because that puts pressure on them, confuses them in terms of who their role on line of authority is. Again, and I won't get into the last point you made about the removal from teachers on call, although that certainly presents a conflict of interest that we'd be happy to talk about with you.
It's not in your policies.
Let's,
Well, I think it's important too that I look at the preamble of the Declaration of Independence. We hold these truths to be self-evident that all men are created equal, endowed by the Creator with certain unalienable rights. In our First Amendment, there's 5 points in the First Amendment. One of those is freedom of speech. And when I got elected, I did not give up that inalienable right because our founders thought that was, pinnacle to the founding of our country. And even when we quote the Pledge of Allegiance, one nation under God, so there's implying that there is something higher and more transcendent that we go to for our truth. And so the freedom of speech I will not give up. Considering I have two of my kids in the Minnesota National Guard that were ended up in Afghanistan at the airport. My one daughter was a first responder, and she ended up getting a Bronze Star, good story for Jim, in a Medal of Honor. She was there after the explosion, and if they're willing to die for our First Amendment rights, I will die up here defending my First Amendment rights.
Rest of you.
Turn it over to Ms. Freiberg because she was next to address the board or to ask questions.
Well, I had written down I recorded the interview. I wrote down a lot of the questions and what I'm being presented with today is a lot of ticky-tack things that I don't think, you just threw stuff at a wall to see if anything would stick. I'm excited to get this meeting over with though. So looking into my conduct, that's just nuts. As a school board member, because I did things like I asked questions at school board meetings, hold public meetings for constituents to express their opinions and concerns. As for valuable curriculum information, that is school board work. And then I dare to express the reason why I voted the way I did. It's a sad day when our valuable tax dollars are wasted in an attempt to find something wrong. I work for the people. This is a sham of an investigation. And this won't stop me from talking to people. It didn't work. I am focused on bettering the lives of our students, teachers, and faculty, and I will continue advocating for parental involvement, academics, and freedom in ISD 728.
Oh, I'm sorry, Mr. Waldsberger, did you have any response or anything?
Again, none of those items are things that were addressed. She's making statements that, Director Friday has been making statements that,
Yeah, I mean,
really,
I was
excuse me,
questioning
I did not interrupt you, please don't interrupt me. You're making statements that are not at all related to the findings against you. Again, the findings that you're late for your board obligations, you're unprepared. And if you say that that's ticky-tack to be late and to be unprepared for meetings, that raises a concern for me in terms of the appreciation of your role as a board member and the importance.
Parents are more concerned with other shit. Absolutely.
I feel like that could be further from the truth,
And
in all respect. And I mean, I don't think I'm the only person that's been late as other board members, so maybe we should look into other allegations if we're gonna be like that.
I'm gonna ask everyone, please, we don't wanna be here till midnight. We are trying to conduct our business as a board. So I need everyone to just refrain from making comments, refrain from clapping so we can get through our business this evening. Would really be appreciated. I will turn it over to Director Tilbane, who had a question or comment.
Yes, I had a comment in regard to, as a school board, I've served for 7 years and I've never been asked to not ask a tough question or anything. More of a courtesy to our administrators of being prepared for any questions. That has been the request, but never not to ask a tough question. So just wanted to clarify that, and we are here to serve the people and
She
we
won't talk to
do a
people
great job of
when they come up to you.
capturing surveys of what the district wants as a whole and acting on those requests, so thank you, everyone.
Any other questions, comments from other board members?
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair. Superintendent and Chair Thompson, thank you for your commitment to the district. Thank you, Mr. Walker, for your time into this. Is there a little bit more background that can maybe be shared as to the process preceding this that maybe would just provide a little bit more kind of clarification and transparency?
Absolutely.
Yes, in terms of this response, as Mr. Waldsberger said, the board members have a 3-year orientation program where they have a number of opportunities to learn state law, federal law, policy, etc. One of the questions came up around the particular policy around, for example, the code of ethics. That policy was put in before 1995. That is something that every single year, every single board member in ISD 728 and most likely across the entire state of Minnesota and across the country, they acknowledge and they sign an oath saying that they will do the things that are identified. They will be prepared in meetings, etc. As Mr. Waldsberger said, there are also opportunities in our district for that comprehensive program to have mentors to meet monthly, etc. In addition to that, we recognize that as concerns arise, there are opportunities for board members, all of us, each of us, to work with each other individually, whether it be the mentor, whether it be a colleague, whether it be the board chair, etc. Part of that also is repeated meetings, not only with the superintendent and board chair, but also including mentors. If those concerns continue, and if those things are exhausted to the point that the amount of time that staff is spending on things that are not consistent with what the entire board has provided direction for the superintendent, for administration and the schools to do, that's when things are brought to an additional level. And in this particular situation, there were countless communications, there were countless meetings individually, there were countless meetings offered with board members or mentors, there were countless opportunities for the board chair or other officers to meet with individuals to answer questions, etc. So in this particular situation, the actions that were described tonight are contrary to what the board has directed me and our entire team in the district to do. And so that is why you might remember at a summer meeting, I kind of laid that out for the board to say, here's what each of you have brought to me. You have us doing all sorts of different things. We can't do that. As a board, we need you to provide direction. You need to decide communication protocols. You need to decide as a group how you would like us to spend our time. This is an example of that. Again, just a follow-up. In addition to that, I would just acknowledge that there's a lot of training that each board member has been through, not only within our district, but we have asked board members to be part of the phase 1, phase 2, et cetera, with MSBA, which clearly outlines the role of the superintendent, of the board, the authority of the board, members of the board, et cetera. So again, these types of things are not typically brought forward to an attorney until all those things have been exhausted.
Thank you, Dr. Any other questions or comments from board members? Okay, hearing none at this time. Board members, you've had an opportunity to hear the findings, ask questions, to have discussion. That what has been presented. We'll now move on to item B, which is an opportunity for us to hear from Mr. Walsberger about any possible action the board may want to consider. I'll turn it back over to you, Mr. Walsberger.
Thank you, Madam Chair. The board really has a number of options here. It's a self-policing body, and so option number 1 is to do nothing at this point in time. You've got findings, you've publicly discussed them. You could consider that to be sufficient if you think that the conduct is unlikely to recur based upon what you've heard here this evening. If you think that the problem is likely to continue, then you may want to consider other actions. You can do what essentially is a verbal reprimand where board members speak their mind about the issue. Doesn't happen very often, but that's one way to address it. You can disavow different kinds of conduct. So for example, the statement that Director Anderson made about the Minneapolis Elementary School, you could certainly disavow that as an option. Disavowing has the practical effect of saying we're not going to be liable if anyone comes forward and says you have some kind of discriminatory animus. We're not going to be liable for that. Finally, an option that I did prepare in case you wanted to consider that, but it's totally within the purview of the board. You could adopt a resolution censuring board members for their conduct, and it would just be limited to the findings that are in the report. And so I prepared a censure resolution. I'm happy to pass that around if board members want to see that. If you don't think that's the direction you're interested in heading, then there's no need for me to do that yet. So.
Okay, I would like, if you could pass the resolution for the board to review it, that would be fantastic. Board members, if you want to pause for a few moments and we'll take a moment to read the resolution.
Sorry, man, when you were giving us options, I was writing them down. Did you give us 3 or 4?
It's a good question. Take no action was one option. 2, just verbally address the conduct is another action. 3, you can just simply disavow certain types of conduct. Or 4, you could pass a censure resolution addressing the conduct. Within the authority of the board, board members also have the authority to remove other school board members for cause. I'm not recommending that here.
Better not.
This is the kind of behavior where you look and say, is it remediable if somebody in other words, is there some way we can correct it so it doesn't continue? But if there were continued violations of the code of ethics, then that would certainly be under Minnesota law just cause for removal of the board members.
Chair Thompson, I have a point of information.
One moment, can I just want to make sure all board members have had an opportunity, all have read the resolution? Okay.
Point of information, Minnesota statute 13D.05. Are you familiar with that
I am.
statute? I just was wondering, it says, in that statute, a public body shall close one or more meetings for preliminary consideration of allegations or charges against an individual subject to its authority. Is that germane?
It would be, except that the Department of Administration of the Minnesota Court of Appeals has said that the school board can determine whether board members are employees for purposes of that law and the Government Act Practices Act, or whether they're public officials. And your board has passed a resolution stating that they're public officials. So there's no basis for going into closed session.
Because it doesn't say in the statute whether it's employees or public officials in that.
Now, I would say to you that the understanding of the law is that if you are subject to the board's authority as an employee, you can have preliminary consideration of allegations in closed session. But otherwise, you are a public official, and again, public officials don't have the right to have that discussion in closed session.
Yeah, that's why we passed the resolution a couple months ago. It's for this moment.
I was not here when you passed the resolution.
No, I know you were, but you wrote it.
I think it's best to have this out in the open. I mean, I feel like I've done nothing wrong with my heart. I know that I'm here for the right reason. I want to foster positive change for the students, staff, and faculty. It's just, yeah, so I'm glad this is out in the open. This is great.
Any comments, questions for the board about any course of action, anything that Mr. Walsberger talked about?
Director Anderson, are you stating that you would prefer this discussion to occur in closed session?
No, but the statute said that we have the right to have closed or give consent to open. And I would give consent to have it open because sunlight always sanitizes.
I agree. Sunlight's important.
And the thing that's interesting here in this resolution is that failed to provide timely notice to superintendent or board chair when Director Anderson needed additional information on an agenda item. How many times did that occur? In your recollection, Chair Thompson?
I don't know off the top of my head.
Once. Unprepared for board meetings. It was stated August 14th, and I have Word documents that are probably 30 to 40 pages long. You both, Superintendent Bittman and Chair Thompson, you both saw those documents. Did you think I didn't spend any time on those? I mean, those were pretty detailed. We caught typos, heading errors, citation errors. If that, I don't get where you say that I'm unprepared. That's just wrong.
So the question at hand for the board is, what would we like to do? Do we have any other-
How about the rest of you step down?
I will answer the question that in the board meeting on September 14th, Director Anderson specifically stated he'd only gotten through about half the policies. I mean, it's his own beliefs.
But the context of that, and I think both Chair Thompson and Superintendent Bennett, you know, the detailed documents that I put out. Did anyone else do anything close to that? Or is it just me? I'm just wondering.
That's a good question.
Yeah, I would say that board members regularly provide input on policies.
Generic. You are gonna get run out of here real, bud.
He said you read them all, and you detailed half of them.
I'd also say, if you were a teacher and a student came to you and said, I only did half my homework, but the half I did, I really did in more detail than anybody else, you wouldn't say the student was prepared. And I'm not sure if that's what's being said here, but that's what it sounds like is what's being said to me. Bottom line is, the statement was made that he was not prepared to pursue, and again, we're not making it up, it comes right out of the report.
It's interesting after 37 years in corporate America that all of a sudden I found out how bad I am.
Okay. So one of the options the board has is that we just heard that it would be to adopt a resolution. Does anyone need any more time to read the draft resolution this evening?
4 options or 3 options.
With that, I would make a motion that we approve the resolution. Do I have a second?
Which one?
Which one?
I have the resolution that was provided by the attorney this evening, and I would make a motion that we approve the resolution censuring the school board.
There's 4 options.
4 options.
The fourth option was the resolution as presented. I will second that
To
motion.
censure.
Why don't
So we have a
start with
motion
number
and a
one?
second to approve the resolution censuring
Censorship.
the board members. Is there any comment or discussion among board members?
Point of order, I'd like to move this to a roll call vote.
Absolutely. Any other questions or comments from the board members? Hearing none, I'll call the question. There is a resolution to censure school board members that was provided from the attorney. All in favor, state aye.
Roll
I'm
call.
I have a roll call. I will,
Put it on record.
please indicate with an aye or a nay. I will start with Sarah Hamlin. John Anderson.
Nay.
Christy Tolbane.
Aye.
Joel Nelson.
Aye.
Wow.
You're
Sarah
gone in
Weiss.
2024. It's
Mindy
okay.
Freiberg.
Nay.
Holly Thompson is an aye.
Gone in
Motion passes with
2024.
a 5
Adios, folks.
to vote. And with that, this concludes our portion of the meeting. I'd like to thank Mr. Walsberger for his time. And if we have any other further questions, I will reach out to you.